The only unsolved homicide in Oswego County.
Allen's disappearance Easter morning.
Though 20 years have passed since Heidi Allen's disappearance on April 3rd, 1994, this anniversary hasn't gotten any easier on a mother who lost her 18-year-old daughter just before her graduation.
20 years later, I still don't have Heidi. And I want that closure.
Heidi Marie Allen was an 18-year-old with big dreams of starting a family and pursuing a career in education or counseling. She was on the verge of achieving her goals, nearing graduation from Onondaga Community College with a degree in human services. Heidi had also recently applied for a job at the Oswego County District Attorney's Office, where her name would become forever entwined, but not in the way anyone would have hoped. Heidi disappeared on Easter Sunday, April 3, 1994, while working at the D&W convenience store at the corner of State Highway 104 and 104B in New Haven, New York. Heidi opened the store that morning at 5:45 a.m. sometime between 8 o'clock and 8:15 a.m. A passerby flagged down an Oswego County Sheriff's deputy outside the store, concerned that something was amiss. When the police entered the convenience store, they found the cash register untouched, with money still inside. Small stacks of cash were also left on the counter, apparently from customers who had paid for fuel and merchandise in Heidi's absence. The last recorded transaction on the cash register was at 7:42 a.m. Despite a thorough search of the store and its surroundings, the police found very few clues. Heidi's jacket, purse, keys, and maroon station wagon were all still at the store, indicating she had not left voluntarily. Shortly after Heidi's disappearance became public, Richard Thibodeau, a resident, contacted the police to inform them that he had been at the store earlier that morning to buy 2 packs of cigarettes. He had no idea that his willingness to cooperate would turn his life upside down. A witness later called 911, reporting that they had seen a light blue van in the convenience store's parking lot that morning. The witness claimed to have seen 2 men with a woman near the van, and one of the men was described as holding the woman in what was described as a bear hug before putting her into the van. This description caught the attention of investigators, who connected it to Richard Thibodeau, as he drove a van similar to the one described by the witness. However, there was a significant discrepancy. Thibodeau's van was white and black, not blue. Despite this, many believe the police fixated on Thibodeau as their prime suspect, disregarding other possibilities. About a month after Heidi's disappearance, Richard Thibodeau was arrested, followed by his brother, Gary Thibodeau. Both men were charged and faced trial. Richard was ultimately found not guilty of all charges. However, in a perplexing twist, Gary Thibodeau was found guilty of kidnapping, despite the apparent lack of substantial evidence against him. The jury, in a confusing move, asked the judge how they should proceed in discussing Gary's guilt, suggesting there was no evidence to consider. Yet, they still returned a guilty verdict, leaving Gary in shock. As time passed, the case took on more layers of mystery. Federal prosecutor Lisa Peebles began investigating the circumstances surrounding Gary's conviction and uncovered troubling information. She discovered that Heidi Allen had been working as a confidential informant for the Oswego County Sheriff's Department since she was 15 years old. This crucial detail had been withheld from Gary's defense team during the trial, raising serious questions about the fairness of the proceedings. Peebles also learned that, before Heidi's abduction, a sheriff's deputy had accidentally dropped an informant card with Heidi's name, photo, and status as a drug informant in the parking lot of the convenience store where she worked. The implications of this mistake were staggering, as it could have exposed Heidi's identity to those who might wish her harm.
Former Oswego County Sheriff's Deputy Christopher Van Patten took a picture of Heidi Allen and put her information, including her chosen codename Julia Roberts, on an index card. Today in court, Van Patten testified about the information Allen provided, saying, quote, "It was rumor mill, what she heard on the street." Van Patten kept Heidi Allen's informant information in his patrol car and at some point dropped it.
The case took another turn when Tonya Priest, a woman who had been trying to share her story with the police for years, came forward with shocking revelations. She claimed that in the early 2000s, she had been at the home of James and Vicky Steen watching television when the topic of Heidi Allen's disappearance came up. According to Priest, James Steen, in a boastful manner, confessed to abducting and killing Heidi. He claimed that he, along with Roger Breckenridge and Michael Bowe, had taken Heidi in a white van, beaten her, and ultimately caused her death. That bear-hugged description, matching the earlier witness account, was eerily echoed in Steen's confession. Priest's account was supported by other witnesses who also claimed to have heard Steen brag about the crime. Yet, despite this new information, the authorities seemed reluctant to reopen the investigation. Instead, they dismissed Priest's claims, leading her to accuse one investigator of not caring whether Heidi was ever found. In the end, Gary Thibodeau, who had maintained his innocence throughout, died in prison just 2 years before he would have been eligible for parole. His appeal for a new trial, led by Lisa Peebles, was denied, despite the overwhelming evidence suggesting that the original trial had been deeply flawed.
In a 64-page decision, the judge overseeing the appeal said even though there was a, quote, plethora of information presented, it was not enough for him to overturn Thibodeau's conviction and order a new trial. You didn't feel very confident during the appeal, did you?
Oh, no. This is a kangaroo courtroom all the way, just like the first one.
Got the decision, Judge King denying you a new trial. I don't think were you expecting?
Oh, no, I said from the beginning, this guy was just tapped in there to prolong this and drag it out as long as he can, hoping I die in here.
The disappearance of Heidi Marie Allen remains a haunting mystery. Despite the numerous errors and missteps in the investigation, the most tragic aspect is that Heidi herself has never been found. Without her, the complete truth of what happened that Easter morning in 1994 may never be fully uncovered, leaving the case shrouded in speculation and doubt. However, at the time of her disappearance, Heidi was described as a white female, 5 feet 11 inches, 145 pounds, light brown, blonde hair worn long and curly, and blue eyes. She was last seen wearing a grey sweatshirt with a plaid SU logo on the front and white sneakers. She wore glasses or contact lenses and had pierced ears. Her date of birth was September 14, 1975. Anyone who was near the convenience store when she disappeared or has information about the case is asked to contact the Oswego County Sheriff's Office by email or phone at 1-888-349-3411. It has been more than 6 years since Susan Osborne and her son, Evan Chartrand, disappeared without a trace. The 42-year-old mother and her 14-year-old son were officially reported missing in July 2017, leaving behind a trail of clues but very few answers. Who were Susan Osborne and Evan Chartrand? What happened to them? And who is responsible for their disappearance? Susan Osborne, originally from Michigan, became a mother for the first time on June 25, 2002, when she gave birth to her son, Evan Chartrand. Susan and Evan later moved to Alabama when her first husband, Evan's father, was transferred to the state for a job. Unfortunately, their marriage didn't last, and the couple eventually separated. In 2007, Susan welcomed a daughter, named Hannah Grace, born from a different relationship. However, this relationship also ended, and Susan found herself once again on her own. At one point, Susan had to flee from yet another relationship due to concerns for her safety, enlisting her brother, Brian, help to her escape with her children. As a result, Hannah's father gained custody of her, while Evan remained with Susan full-time. Despite her love for her children, Susan seemed to struggle with finding a lasting and loving relationship. She felt as though she was doomed to be unlucky in love, thinking that if she couldn't make it work with the fathers of her children, she might never find a partner. But in 2013, Susan believed her luck had finally changed when she met Jerry Osborne, a man who seemed to be her Prince Charming. Susan, who loved the outdoors and especially enjoyed fishing, often shared this hobby with her son, Evan. It was during one of their fishing trips that Susan met Jerry Osborne, a former Air Force veteran who was working as a 911 dispatcher. Jerry had suffered a traumatic brain injury while serving in Iraq, leading to his medical discharge from the military. To manage his PTSD, Jerry was prescribed medication. During that fateful fishing trip, Susan and Jerry hit it off and exchanged phone numbers. Excited by the prospect of a new relationship, Susan quickly called her best friend, Holly, to tell her about the amazing man she had just met. When Holly finally met Jerry, she had to agree. He seemed like a great guy who would be a wonderful husband for Susan and a good stepfather for Evan. Not long after meeting, Susan and Jerry obtained a marriage license, and, on January 25, 2014, they were married. Susan didn't tell any of her close friends or family members about the wedding until after she and Jerry had already said their I do's. For the first few years, Susan appeared to be happy in her marriage, but soon, her family and friends began to see Jerry's true nature. In January 2015, Susan's father fell ill, prompting Susan, Jerry, and Evan to visit him before he passed away. Susan's brother, Brian, noticed how Jerry never left Susan's side during their visit, initially interpreting this as supportive behavior. Brian had planned to go ice fishing with his nephew, Evan, while they were there, but to everyone's surprise, Susan and Jerry abruptly left to return to Alabama after visiting the hospital, leaving her family without a chance to say goodbye. By 2016, Holly became increasingly concerned for her friend's safety. Susan had sent Holly an email asking her not to reply or call back, as Jerry was monitoring her phone conversations. In the email, Susan confided in Holly that she had discovered Jerry was having affairs with men and was working as a gay male escort. Susan had grown suspicious of Jerry's long hours and frequent overtime shifts, leading her to investigate further. Susan eventually called the military base where Jerry worked as a dispatcher, only to find out that he wasn't working that day, despite his claims of picking up extra shifts. Her calls and messages to Jerry went unanswered. After digging through his emails, Susan uncovered the truth. Jerry had been using the alias Jay on a website called Boyscout, where he arranged to meet men for sex and money. She found explicit emails and suggestive photos of Jerry in a thong, which clearly showed his body and tattoos. Despite discovering Jerry's double life, Susan hadn't confronted him about it, but she did stop sleeping in the same bed as him. However, Jerry wasn't oblivious. He sensed something was wrong and began tightening his control over Susan. He made sure she could only speak on the phone while on speaker, and he insisted on driving her everywhere, even though she was perfectly capable of driving herself. In a series of emails to Holly over the next year, Susan outlined her plan to leave Jerry. She couldn't divorce him right away, as she needed to secure a house and insurance for herself and the children. But just weeks before her disappearance in 2017, Susan suddenly changed her mind, telling Holly that she still loved Jerry and wanted to work on their relationship. Concern for Susan and Evan's well-being grew in the summer of 2017, when Susan's mother, Linda, had difficulty getting in touch with her daughter. Despite living in different states, Susan and Linda maintained a close relationship, speaking frequently. Linda initially assumed that maybe Susan was upset about something, but it wasn't like her to ignore all of Linda's calls. When Linda couldn't reach Susan for 2 months, she and Holly reported Susan and Evan missing on July 29, 2017, after a welfare check revealed they were nowhere to be found. On July 31, 2017, police officers went to the home Susan and Evan shared with Jerry. As they approached, they noticed Susan's car in the driveway. When Jerry answered the door, the officers were hit by the overwhelming smell of incense. Jerry explained that it was his cleaning day, and he always burned incense while cleaning. The living room was nearly empty, with only a new couch, recliner, television, and video game system. It looked more like a bachelor pad than the home of a family of 3, especially one with a teenage boy. The officers also noticed that the hardwood floor under the carpet seemed to have been recently replaced. Later, Jerry claimed that he had ripped up the old hardwood floors himself to save money on carpet installation. However, when detectives visited the carpeting store, they were told that no such discount or deal had ever been offered to Jerry. When asked about Susan and Evan's whereabouts, Jerry told investigators that Susan had left him over Memorial Day weekend, taking Evan and all their belongings with her. He claimed to have seen them get into a pickup truck with a tall man, but when deputies asked for the video footage from his home's surveillance cameras, Jerry revealed that he had replaced the entire system at the beginning of June. Neighbors later reported seeing Jerry burning large items in his yard after Susan and Evan disappeared, despite the scorching temperatures. The smoke was so thick that the neighbors said they couldn't leave their homes for days. More disturbing information came to light after Linda reported her daughter and grandson missing. Jerry's father dropped Susan and Evan's two beloved pet terriers off at an animal shelter shortly after they disappeared. However, during a search of the Osborne home, detectives found several 5-gallon paint cans in the pantry and noticed that the living room walls appeared to have been hastily painted. Neighbors also reported hearing gunshots in the early morning hours of Memorial Day weekend. Given Jerry's extensive military training in firearms and forensics, it's possible that he could have killed Susan and Evan and disposed of their bodies without leaving any evidence. Eventually, Jerry stopped cooperating with the authorities and obtained legal counsel. In August 2017, a judge granted Jerry a divorce from Susan. Since then, Jerry has refused to speak with any members of Susan's family about her and Evan's whereabouts. Despite the circumstantial evidence surrounding their disappearance, Susan and Evan's case remains unsolved. Detectives have named Jerry Osborne as their only person of interest, but no charges have been filed. At one point, Jerry tried to convince detectives that Evan had gone to an oral surgeon appointment after he was reported missing, producing what he claimed was a bill for the surgery. However, investigators quickly determined that the document was a no-show notice from the surgeon, not a bill for services rendered. Evan had never gone to his appointment that day. Since May 29, 2017, no one has seen or heard from Susan Osborne or Evan Chartrand. The case remains a haunting mystery, with their loved ones still searching for answers. Ashley Nicole Summers was born on June 16, 1993, in Cleveland, Ohio, and was raised in a close-knit, large extended family. As the eldest child, she often took on the role of caregiver for her younger siblings while her mother, Jennifer Summers, worked. From an early age, Ashley was known for her vibrant personality. She loved to make people laugh, enjoyed being silly, and was particularly fond of scary movies. Described as outgoing and talkative, Ashley had a strong personality and was not afraid to stand up for what she believed was right. Ashley was able to find support and love within her mother's large, extended family despite her biological father's absence from her life. However, around the time of her 14th birthday, her family noticed a significant change in her behavior. Ashley became more difficult and oppositional, especially towards her mother and her mother's long-term boyfriend, who had been a father figure to her. During this time, Ashley began dating a 16-year-old boy named Gene Gill, who lived nearby. Since Ashley was often left at home to care for her younger siblings, she would invite Gene over without her mother's knowledge. Jennifer only discovered this when one of Ashley's younger brothers mentioned it. Upset by the secrecy, Jennifer prohibited Gene from coming over, which further strained their relationship. The tension reached a peak when Jennifer found out that Ashley, at just 13 years old, had stolen money from her purse to get a tattoo of Gene's name. Unable to manage the escalating conflict, Jennifer asked her mother, who lived 4 miles away, to take Ashley in for the summer. Jennifer hoped that staying with her grandmother would help Ashley calm down and improve their relationship. While staying with her grandmother, Ashley also spent time with other relatives during the day. She would check in with her mother daily over the phone. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Ashley had been staying at her Uncle Kevin's house, which was common, as many of her cousins often gathered there. The last time anyone saw Ashley was on July 9, 2007, after she left a pool party at her uncle's house in Cleveland, Ohio, near the 2100 block of West 96th Street. People at the party noted that Ashley seemed down when she first arrived, but she eventually cheered up as she swam and chatted with her relatives. Around 6 p.m., she left the party early, hugging her grand-uncle Keith and telling her family that she was heading to her aunt's house. Ashley had all of her clothes with her, but no cell phone. Her aunt's house was just a 10-minute walk away, but Ashley never made it there. Ashley had a cell phone that was broken. This may have contributed to her initial somber mood at the party. Before attending the pool party, Ashley had been involved in an argument with her uncle Kevin Jonathan, who had smashed her phone after overhearing her gossiping about the family. Ashley had a habit of sneaking out to spend the night elsewhere, so when Jennifer hadn't heard from her daughter for 2 days, she started to worry. She called around to various relatives, but no one had seen Ashley. Becoming increasingly frantic, Jennifer went to the police to report Ashley missing. Unfortunately, the police initially treated Ashley as a runaway, despite Jennifer's insistence that something was seriously wrong. Frustrated by the lack of action from the authorities, Jennifer and her family organized their search efforts, posting flyers around town and hoping for any tips or signs of communication from Ashley.
Last seen in 2007 and hasn't been heard from since.
I thought she ran away at first, but now it's like she's been gone so long.
Strangely, all the flyers were torn down within a day. Though a few tips were submitted, they did not lead to any significant developments. There has been some confusion about the exact date of Ashley's disappearance, with reports ranging from July 4 to July 9, 2007. Most sources agree that Ashley was last seen near the 2100 block of West 96th Street on July 9, but one source claims the FBI believes her last known location was near West 44th Street and Trowbridge Avenue in Cleveland on July 8, 2007. However, about 4 weeks after Ashley went missing, Jennifer received a phone call at work from a blocked number. The voice on the other end said, "Mom, it's me. I'm okay. Don't worry," before hanging up. Jennifer believed it sounded like Ashley, but couldn't be certain. Later that year, on November 17, 2007, Ashley's grandparents thought they saw her walking along West 44th Street in Cleveland. The woman they saw had short blonde hair, matching tips they had received about Ashley's appearance. However, by the time they turned the car around, the woman was gone. Sadly, these incidents did not lead to any new information. In May 2008, the FBI became involved in Ashley's case after the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children brought it to their attention. The FBI began to consider whether Ashley's disappearance might be connected to other missing girls from the Cleveland area. Amanda Berry disappeared on April 21, 2003, at the age of 16, while walking home from her job at Burger King. Georgina De Jesus, age 14, vanished on April 2, 2004, while walking home from school. In a miraculous turn of events, Amanda, Georgina, and another missing woman, Michelle Knight, were found alive on May 6, 2013, after Amanda managed to escape from Ariel Castro's house, where they had been held captive for nearly a decade. There were rumors that Ashley might have been in Castro's house at some point, but authorities found no evidence to support this. Castro was sentenced to life in prison plus 1,000 years, but he hanged himself in his cell just 1 month into his sentence, taking any potential secrets about Ashley's fate with him. Gene Gill, Ashley's boyfriend, was out of town at a family reunion when Ashley disappeared. Although police interviewed him multiple times, his story remained consistent and his alibi was solid. As a result, Gene was never named as a person of interest in the case. Ashley's family members were also questioned, and some underwent polygraph tests, but the results were never made public. Authorities were particularly interested in Ashley's older male relatives, especially Uncle Kevin Jonathan, who had argued with Ashley on the day she disappeared. Despite their suspicions, the case went cold, and years passed without any significant leads. However, in January 2015, the Summers family thought they had a breakthrough when they saw a photograph of a woman taken by an ATM security camera in Rhode Island. The woman bore a striking resemblance to what Ashley might have looked like at 21 years old. The Warwick Police Department released the photograph as part of an investigation into an ATM and identity fraud scheme. However, the police later confirmed that the woman in the photo was not Ashley. A more recent development occurred in December 2018, when Kevin Jonathan, the uncle who had argued with Ashley on the day of her disappearance, was charged with multiple counts of rape, attempted rape, and gross sexual imposition. The charges involved several minors, and Kevin admitted to committing these crimes over 25 years. In February 2020, he was sentenced to 35 years in prison. About a month before Kevin's arrest, the FBI searched the back of his home in Cleveland. Despite this, the FBI has never officially named Kevin as a suspect in Ashley's disappearance. On July 13, 2021, the FBI conducted another search in connection with Ashley's case, digging up land in the area of West 43rd Street and Train Avenue in Cleveland based on new tips. However, only animal bones were found during the search. Since the day she vanished, Ashley's social media activity and phone usage have ceased entirely, and there have been no confirmed sightings of her. Ashley's family continues to hope for answers, but her case remains a heartbreaking mystery. If you have any information about the disappearance of Ashley Summers, please contact the Cleveland Police Department in Ohio at 216-623-5005. In the quiet, rural town of Montgomery, Vermont, the evening of March 19, 2004, seemed like any other. But as night gave way to the early hours of March 20th, the life of 17-year-old Brianna Alexandra Maitland would change forever, leaving her family and community grappling with unanswered questions for years to come.
Mia Moran's going to join us live from the scene in Montgomery with more on this latest search. Mia, here's the question. Why are they out there today?
Well, Gus, detectives say there's no special reason they were back out here in Montgomery searching for signs of Brianna Maitland in the fields and along the riverbank. They say they're actively investigating her disappearance despite uncovering little in the case in the past 5 years.
Brianna was known as a free-spirited and determined young woman. Raised on a peaceful farm near the US-Canadian border, she grew up in an environment that valued independence and self-expression. Her parents, Bruce and Kelly Maitland, encouraged her to explore her passions and carve out her path in life. It wasn't surprising, then, when Brianna decided to move out of her parents' home at the age of 17, seeking more freedom and proximity to her friends in a nearby town. Brianna's parents trusted her judgment and believed in her ability to handle the responsibility of living on her own. She had shown discipline and strength, especially through her training in the martial art of jiu-jitsu. Confident in her abilities, Brianna moved to live with a friend and transferred to a new high school, where most of her friends were enrolled. But it was during this time that Brianna's life began to take a turn for the worse. By early 2004, Brianna's life had become somewhat transient. She moved between the homes of various friends, and eventually dropped out of high school in February of that year. Despite this setback, she remained determined to improve her circumstances. Brianna found work at 2 jobs, one at the Black Lantern Inn, where she was a regular employee, and another as a waitress at a small restaurant in St. Albans, Vermont. During this period, she moved in with a childhood friend, Jillian Stout, in Sheldon, Vermont, about 20 miles from her parents' home. Brianna still harbored dreams of leaving rural Vermont for the excitement of city life. Realizing that her decision to drop out of high school could hinder these ambitions, she enrolled in a GED program, with plans to attend college afterward. Brianna was also navigating the complexities of relationships, which, in the close-knit environment of a small town, could lead to conflicts. One such conflict arose between Brianna and her friend, Keely Lacrosse, over a boy. Keely was upset that Brianna had begun spending time with her ex-boyfriend, and tensions between the two escalated. This culminated in a physical altercation at a party, where Keely attacked Brianna, leaving her with a broken nose, 2 black eyes, and a concussion. Despite Brianna's training in jiu-jitsu, she did not defend herself during the assault, a fact that has puzzled many who knew her. The Cross has claimed that people have exaggerated the incidents over time, saying, "I hit her 2 times, she didn't fight back. It looks like I annihilated her, but I didn't. I hit her twice, and she didn't fight back. I said, 'You're not worth it,' and walked away. They look at me like I'm a monster, and I jumped her with a crew of women, but that's not what happened." Brianna later pressed charges against Keeley, but tragically, 3 weeks after the incident, she disappeared, deepening the mystery that still surrounds her case. On the morning of March 19, 2004, it appeared that Brianna was taking steps toward a brighter future. She took her GED exam and celebrated by having lunch with her mother, Kelly. Brianna was in good spirits, and the two spent the day shopping and running errands together. However, while they were in a checkout line, something outside caught Brianna's attention. She abruptly told her mother she needed to step outside and left the store to investigate. When Kelly joined her outside a short time later, she found Brianna visibly shaken and upset. Kelly chose not to press her daughter for details, respecting Brianna's privacy. After their outing, Brianna insisted on returning home to prepare for her evening shift at the Black Lantern Inn. Kelly dropped her off at Gillian Stout's home between 3:30 and 4 p.m. This would be the last time Kelly saw her daughter. Before heading to work, Brianna left a note for Gillian, indicating that she would be home after her shift. Gillian, however, was leaving town for the weekend and wouldn't return until Monday, March 22nd. Brianna arrived at work on time and completed her shift, clocking out at approximately 11:20 p.m. Her co-workers later reported that Brianna seemed perfectly normal that evening, with no signs of distress. They invited her to join them for a late dinner, but Brianna declined, citing the need to rest for her second job the following day. Brianna left the Black Lantern Inn alone, and less than a mile away, her car was discovered the next morning in a bizarre and troubling condition. However, on the morning of March 20, 2004, a Vermont state trooper responded to a report of an abandoned car at an old, dilapidated property known locally as the Old Dutchburn House in Richford, Vermont. The vehicle, a green 1985 Oldsmobile registered to Kelly Maitland, had been backed into the side of the barn on the property, causing damage to both the car and the building. A piece of plywood from the barn's window was found resting on the car's trunk. Inside the car, 2 of Brianna's uncashed paychecks were on the passenger seat, while a water bottle, loose change, and an unsmoked cigarette were found nearby outside the vehicle. Despite these unusual circumstances, the responding officer did not run the vehicle's license plate or registration to identify its owner. He assumed it was a case of drunk driving and had the car towed to a local garage. This oversight, coupled with the fact that Brianna's roommate, Gillian, was out of town, meant that Brianna's disappearance went unreported for several days, a critical lapse in the investigation. Gillian only realized something was wrong when she returned home on Monday, March 22nd, and found that Brianna had never returned after work. After contacting Brianna's parents and learning that they had not heard from her either, the Maitlands filed a missing persons report with the Vermont State Police on March 23rd. It wasn't until 2 days later, on March 25th, when Brianna's parents brought photos of her to the police, that authorities made the connection between Brianna and the abandoned Oldsmobile. The Maitlands immediately identified the car as Brianna's, confirming their worst fears. Initially, the police theorized that Brianna had run away, dismissing the possibility of foul play. The scene at the Old Dutchburn House was not treated as a crime scene, and no photographs were taken by law enforcement. Fortunately, some passers-by who had found the scene suspicious had taken photos of the car, which later became crucial pieces of evidence. Several witnesses reported seeing Brianna's car at the Old Dutchburn House between 11:30 p.m. on March 19th and the early hours of March 20th. One man said the car's headlights were on when he passed by, while another reported seeing the turn signal flashing. However, neither witness saw anyone in or around the vehicle. The investigation into Brianna's disappearance quickly grew cold. Rumors began to swirl, and the Maitland family received numerous calls from individuals claiming to know Brianna's whereabouts, but none of these leads panned out. One particularly alarming tip suggested that Brianna was being held against her will at a drug house in Berkshire, Vermont, about 10 miles from Montgomery. Although the police raided the home and found drugs, they found no sign of Brianna. It was during this time that rumors about Brianna's involvement with drugs began to surface. Some claimed she had been experimenting with crack cocaine, a charge that her family vehemently denied. However, the area was known for its drug problems, and Brianna was known to have been acquainted with two local drug dealers, Raymond Ryans and Nathaniel Charles Jackson. In the years following Brianna's disappearance, an anonymous woman came forward with a chilling story. She claimed that Ryans and Jackson had killed Brianna after she confronted them over a debt they owed her. According to the woman, the men attacked Brianna, dismembered her body, and disposed of her remains at a pig farm. This story, while horrifying, has never been corroborated. In 2007, the FBI took a renewed interest in the case, officially stating that Brianna's disappearance was the result of foul play and that the scene at the old Dutchburn house had likely been staged to mislead investigators. Despite this, no arrests have been made, and Brianna's fate remains a mystery. Over the years, many theories have emerged about what happened to Brianna. Some believe she ran away, though this seems unlikely given the circumstances. Others point to her connections to local drug dealers, or even suggest a link between her disappearance and that of Maura Murray, another young woman who vanished just 90 miles away a month earlier. Some suspect Keely Lacrosse, though police have stated she has been cleared of any involvement. In 2006, security footage from a casino surfaced, showing a woman who resembled Brianna, but this lead was never pursued. In 2016, police announced that they had recovered DNA from Brianna's car, which they believed belonged to the perpetrator, but no further information has been released. As of today, Brianna Alexandra Maitland remains missing, and her case remains unsolved. Her family continues to hope for answers, and for the day when Brianna's story will finally have an ending, one that brings them the closure they deserve. However, recently, the FBI and Vermont State Police have intensified efforts to resolve Brianna Maitland's disappearance. As of March 2024, they have announced a $40,000 reward for information leading to her recovery. This initiative marks a significant step, as they are urging anyone with knowledge of the case to come forward, emphasizing that no tip is too small. This renewed push aims to generate new leads in this decades-old mystery, which remains unsolved but is still actively investigated by authorities.
Police and Spierer's mother are pleading with the public to call in with any information they might have.
I think that we were all very hopeful that there would be that one nugget of information or that one phone call that would come in that would lead us to Lauren. And at this point, that phone call has not been received, but we are still encouraged.
In relationship to that, the person that knows this person that's not coming forward with the information, I beg you to come forward.
Lauren Spierer was born on January 17, 1991, and grew up in the affluent town of Scarsdale, in Westchester County, New York. She had a close relationship with her parents, Robert and Charlene, who provided her with a supportive environment, helping her excel in whatever path she chose. Lauren graduated from Edgemore High School in 2009. After high school, she spent time at a summer camp in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, where she met her boyfriend, Jesse Wolfe, and formed close friendships that would carry into her college years. Lauren was very active in the Jewish community during her time at Indiana University, where she was majoring in textiles and merchandising. She even spent one of her spring breaks in Israel, planting trees with the Jewish National Fund. At 20 years old, Lauren's promising life took a tragic turn when she vanished in the early hours of June 3, 2011, near the Indiana University campus in Bloomington, Indiana. The semester had just ended, and Lauren and her friends decided to celebrate with a night out. Her boyfriend, Jesse, stayed home, while Lauren partied with her friends, including Jay Rosenbaum, Corey Rossman, and Michael Beth. According to them, Lauren became extremely intoxicated that night. As often happens during end-of-semester celebrations, many students were heavily drinking. The police were able to piece together a timeline of Lauren's movements that night using security camera footage and witness statements. At around 1:45 a.m., she was seen entering Kilroy's Sports Bar. Lauren was so intoxicated that she removed her shoes while on the outdoor patio and left them there when she exited the bar with Corey Rossman at around 2:30 a.m. Lauren also left her phone behind. A passerby, named Zach Oak, noticed how intoxicated Lauren was and offered help, but she declined, saying she and Rossman had just arrived at her apartment complex, Smallwood Plaza. Inside the complex, Rossman got into a minor altercation with another group of students, and one of them punched him. Between 2:50 and 3 a.m., Lauren and Rossman returned to Rossman's apartment, where his roommate, Michael Beth, was still awake. Beth noticed how intoxicated both of them were and helped Rossman to his bed after Rossman vomited on the carpet. Despite Beth's concerns for Lauren's safety, she refused to stay and decided to visit Jay Rosenbaum, who lived next door. Jay, who had met Lauren at the same camp where she met Jesse, noticed that Lauren had a black eye, which he believed was from a fall earlier that night. Lauren used Jay's phone to call two friends, but neither answered. At around 4:30 a.m., Jay claimed Lauren left his apartment, and the last he saw of her, she was walking south on the street barefoot, wearing black leggings and a white shirt. A few hours later, Jesse Wolfe woke up to find that Lauren had not returned home. He texted her, only to receive a reply from an employee at Kilry Sports Bar, informing him that Lauren had left her phone there the previous night. Alarmed, Jesse immediately called the police to report Lauren missing. During the investigation, Lauren's friends mentioned that she had been using drugs that night in addition to drinking heavily. They claimed she was snorting cocaine and crushed Klonopin, a drug used for anxiety and panic attacks. Police later found cocaine in Lauren's room, making these claims more plausible. Lauren's small stature, she was only 4 feet 11 inches and weighed 90 pounds, combined with the heavy drinking and drug use, would have left her extremely intoxicated and vulnerable. All three of Lauren's friends quickly hired lawyers, which some see as suspicious, but others argue it was a smart move to protect themselves during the investigation. The police did have some leads, including security footage showing a white pickup truck driven by a person of interest, but this lead was eventually ruled out. In August 2011, police conducted a 9-day search at the Sycamore Ridge landfill, which receives garbage from Bloomington. By May 2013, over 3,000 tips had been submitted to the police, but none led to a breakthrough. In a tragic twist, another Indiana University student, Hannah Wilson, disappeared after a night out at Kilray Sports Bar in April 2015. Her body was found, and her killer was arrested after leaving his phone next to her body. Despite the similarities, police have stated that there is no connection between Lauren's and Hannah's cases. As of today, Lauren Spierer remains missing, and no arrests have been made in connection with her disappearance. However, recent updates in the Lauren Spierer case have emerged with the release of a new book titled College Girl Missing: The True Story of How a Young Woman Disappeared in Plain Sight by investigative journalist Sean Cohen. The book uncovers new details about the investigation, including the chilling possibility that Lauren may not have made it out of the townhouses alive after her night out in Bloomington. Despite these revelations, the case remains unsolved, and no new evidence has definitively surfaced.
This original poster you're seeing here was made by the Martin family, who dedicated the rest of their lives to getting answers about his disappearance. He went missing during a family camping trip in the backcountry of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So to understand that search, still the largest in the park's history, we went along with one of the rangers who took part, his name Dwight McCarter. We retraced the steps of that nearly 2-week search 50 years later. Search teams faced at the time days of rain and steep terrain in the area. They marched in lines, I'm told, along the trails in the Smokies looking for Dennis.
Dennis Lloyd Martin was born on June 20, 1962. Like many boys of his era, he had a love for the outdoors. He especially cherished the times when his father, William Martin, would take him and his older brother on camping trips. This annual tradition took them to the Great Smoky Mountains every Father's Day, a short distance from their home in Knoxville, Tennessee. On June 14, 1969, 6-year-old Dennis joined his father, grandfather, and brother for their yearly camping trip. The family arrived at their campsite, eager to enjoy their time in the beautiful surroundings of the Smoky Mountains. That afternoon, at around 4:30 p.m., Dennis was playing with other children at the campground. The kids, full of energy and imagination, devised a plan to surprise the adults by sneaking around some trees and bushes. One by one, the children sprang out from their hiding places, except for Dennis. William Martin, Dennis's father, had seen his son hide behind the bushes and waited for him to reappear. But minutes passed, and Dennis did not come out. Concerned, William immediately began searching for his son. He sprinted for 2 miles in the direction Dennis was last seen, but found no trace of him. Upon his return, empty-handed, the gravity of the situation became clear. Dennis's grandfather, Clyde Martin, wasted no time and rushed to the nearest ranger station to report the disappearance. Unfortunately, by the time he reached the station, it was already 8:30 p.m., and a heavy rainstorm had begun to blanket the mountains. Over the next few hours, more than 3 inches of rain fell, washing away any potential tracks or clues. The relentless downpour caused streams and rivers to flood, further complicating the search efforts. The search for Dennis Martin would become the largest in the history of the Great Smoky Mountains. Over 1,400 search and rescue personnel, along with volunteers, combed the area in hopes of finding the missing boy. Helicopters and even Army Special Forces were brought in, sparing no expense. At one point, searchers found a trail that led to the edge of a stream, where they discovered a child's sock and shoe, matching the ones Dennis had been wearing. Despite this, no other significant evidence was uncovered. The search continued until September 14, 1969. William Martin offered a $5,000 reward, equivalent to about $35,000 today, for any information that could lead to Dennis's discovery. Sadly, this incentive did not yield any new leads. Years later, a new clue emerged. An illegal ginseng hunter claimed he had stumbled upon skeletal remains that appeared to be those of a child. However, fearing legal repercussions for his ginseng hunting, the man did not report his find until 1985. By then, when investigators searched the area, they found no trace of the remains he described. In retrospect, the sheer scale of the search might have hindered the chances of finding Dennis. The overwhelming number of searchers and vehicles created significant logistical challenges, leading to disorganization. As search teams and equipment moved through the area, any potential evidence could have been unintentionally destroyed. This chaotic response led the National Park Service and other search and rescue organizations to overhaul their protocols, implementing more structured and systematic methods still in use today. While the search for Dennis Martin did not have a happy ending, it did lead to important changes that have since helped in the successful retrieval of countless missing persons. Dennis's disappearance remains a tragic mystery, but his story has contributed to the improvement of search and rescue operations, ensuring that others might not suffer the same fate. Johnny Gosch's disappearance is one of the most puzzling missing person cases. The oddity doesn't lie solely in the circumstances of his vanishing, but rather in the claims made by his mother, Noreen, in the years that followed. Before delving into the validity of her claims, it's crucial to understand the foundational facts of this event, which is likely a crime. Johnny Gosch was described by those who knew him as an all-American boy. He developed an interest in a dirt bike, so he asked his parents, Noreen and John Sr., what he needed to do to get it. His parents saw this as an ideal opportunity to teach Johnny responsibility and money management, skills that would benefit him as he grew older. John and Noreen decided that if Johnny wanted the dirt bike, he would have to make the money himself. The perfect opportunity came when the Des Moines Register, the local newspaper, needed paperboys to deliver the morning news. Noreen described Johnny as a little businessman, dedicated to saving up for the bike. Every Sunday morning, Johnny would wake his father before dawn, and together they would set off with a wagon full of newspapers, delivering them around their neighborhood. But things changed for the Gosch family on September 5, 1982. It was a typical Sunday morning in Des Moines, Iowa, with nothing out of the ordinary, no dark clouds, no ominous phone calls, and no sinister figures lurking. However, a decision that day would shatter every hope and dream that John and Noreen had for their son and their family. The Sunday morning paper route had become a bonding time for father and son. Johnny was learning the value of $1, and John Sr. found comfort in knowing he was there with his son if anything went wrong. But on that September morning, Johnny broke their routine for the first time. He didn't wake his father. Instead, Johnny took the family dog, a miniature dachshund named Gretchen, and set out alone. The question has been asked countless times since that day: why didn't Johnny wake his father to accompany him? Unfortunately, it's a question that may never be answered. What is known is that Johnny vanished shortly after leaving his home that morning. Later that morning, one of the neighbors called John and Noreen, asking why they hadn't received their newspaper. Alarmed, John Sr. immediately jumped in his car and began searching for his son, while Noreen called the police. Not long into his search, John spotted Johnny's wagon, still carrying the newspapers, but tragically, Johnny was nowhere to be found. Several witnesses reported seeing Johnny between 6 o'clock and 7 a.m. that morning. One neighbor mentioned seeing Johnny talking to a stocky man driving a Ford Fairmont with Nebraska license plates, but thought nothing of it, assuming the man was asking for directions. Another neighbor, John Rossi, also saw Johnny speaking to this man and felt something was off, but unfortunately, he didn't act on his instincts. Years later, Rossi lamented, "I keep hoping I'll wake up in the middle of the night and see that number on the license plate as distinctly as night and day, but that hasn't happened." Johnny's disappearance weighed heavily on the community, not just the Gosch family. This was a time when people couldn't imagine a child being taken from a neighborhood street. The climate in 1982 was such that laws required a child to be missing for 72 hours before police could investigate it as an abduction. Sadly, this outdated mentality hindered the investigation from the start. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the police were complacent, even negligent, in handling this case. Noreen's account of her interactions with the West Des Moines Police Department paints a troubling picture. She claimed it took over 45 minutes for the responding officer to arrive after she called. When he finally did, the first question he asked was, "How many times has your son run away before today?" This marked the beginning of a strained and contentious relationship between the Gosch family, particularly Noreen, and the West Des Moines police. At that time, it was widely believed that corruption plagued the Des Moines Police Department, with some suggesting that no one was more dishonest than the police chief himself. He stepped down amidst allegations of corruption shortly after Johnny disappeared. Noreen believes his resignation is indicative of the broader issues within the department. Most residents agreed that the police did little to bring Johnny home. Nearly all search efforts were coordinated and carried out by the Gosch family and volunteers, while the police had no suspects and essentially questioned no one. In 1989, a new figure entered the mystery of Johnny Gosch, a 21-year-old man named Paul Bonacci, who contacted attorney John DeCamp with a story that could potentially explain Johnny's disappearance. Bonacci, who was serving time for crimes against a teenage boy, claimed he was forced to participate in Johnny's abduction and that both he and Johnny were victims of a vast network of child abusers. This network, Bonacci alleged, kidnapped young boys across the country to sell them to wealthy and powerful individuals for nefarious purposes. He said Johnny was taken for this very reason. Noreen Gosch visited Bonacci in prison to determine if there was any truth to his claims. Disturbingly, Bonacci knew details about Johnny that Noreen said only someone who knew her son personally would know. He mentioned Johnny's tendency to stammer when upset, a scar on his leg, and a specific birthmark on his chest. Perhaps most eerily, Bonacci knew that Noreen was a yoga instructor, something she said had never been disclosed to the media or police. After meeting with Bonacci, Noreen immediately contacted the police and FBI, pleading with them to speak with him. However, despite their lack of leads, law enforcement did not follow up on Bonacci's claims. Banoch's allegations implicated a powerful political financier named Lawrence King from Omaha, Nebraska. Though a grand jury ruled that the charges against King were unfounded, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison for embezzling over $40 million. Banoch later filed a civil lawsuit against King and won a default judgment of $1 million when King failed to respond to the suit. During this civil case, Noreen made a startling claim that added another layer of complexity to Johnny's disappearance. Under oath, Noreen testified that she had seen her son Johnny since his disappearance. She recounted that in March 1997, 15 years after Johnny vanished, she was awakened at 3 a.m. by a knock on her apartment door. When she asked who it was, a male voice responded, saying it was her son, Johnny. Upon opening the door, Noreen claimed she immediately recognized him as her son. The 27-year-old man standing before her revealed the same distinct birthmark on his chest that Johnny had. However, Johnny wasn't alone. Another man, who remained silent, accompanied him. Noreen said Johnny asked her to swear she wouldn't tell anyone about his visit, fearing for his life. He confirmed that he had been abducted into a trafficking ring, but provided little other information. When Noreen suggested calling someone for help, Johnny and the other man quickly left, and she hasn't heard from him since. This alleged visit has sparked much debate. John Sr., who was divorced from Noreen at the time, expressed uncertainty about her claims. Some people believe Noreen is telling the truth, while others consider her story the delusions of a heartbroken mother. This wasn't the only bizarre event involving Noreen and Johnny's case. On September 1, 2006, Noreen claimed that someone left disturbing photos on her doorstep. The images depicted young boys bound and gagged. While police determined that most of the boys in the photos were from a known case in Florida unrelated to Johnny's, one photo couldn't be traced back to that case. Noreen believes this boy is Johnny, though John Sr. does not. The questions surrounding these events are endless. Was the man who visited Noreen really Johnny? Was she hallucinating or lying? Are the photos of Johnny, or were they just a cruel joke? These mysteries only deepen the enigma of Johnny Gosch's disappearance. Despite the tragedy and sadness surrounding Johnny's case, some positive outcomes have emerged due to Noreen's activism. Johnny Gosch was one of the first missing children to appear on milk cartons, helping to launch the campaign. Additionally, on July 1, 1984, the Iowa legislature passed the Johnny Gosch Bill, which eliminated the 72-hour waiting period before investigating missing children. This law set a precedent for how law enforcement handles missing child cases today. Noreen's tireless efforts have opened doors for other families searching for their missing children. Perhaps Johnny is still out there, living in secrecy, fearing the powerful men who took him. It's a question we may never have the answer to. All we can do is hope that Johnny and his family find peace, one way or another. Bryce Laspisa was a 19-year-old college student attending Sierra College in Rocklin, California. Known for his vibrant red hair and charming personality, Bryce was a young man with a bright future ahead of him. However, in late August 2013, his life took an unexpected and bewildering turn, leaving his family and friends desperate for answers and the public captivated by the mystery. Bryce had just started his sophomore year and had returned to Rocklin from his hometown of Laguna Niguel after the summer break. Everything seemed normal at first, but within days, Bryce's behavior began to change drastically. His friends noticed the sudden shift. He was acting out of character, giving away his belongings, including a pair of diamond earrings gifted to him by his mother, and drinking heavily. These actions were unusual for Bryce, who had never shown signs of such behavior before. He even broke up with his girlfriend, Kim Sly, without offering a clear explanation. However, on August 28, 2013, Bryce called his mother, Karen Laspisa, to inform her of his breakup and his plan to drive home to Laguna Niguel to discuss things. Concerned about his erratic behavior, Karen urged him to stay put and assured him she would visit him the next day. However, Bryce was insistent on leaving. Later that night, Bryce's roommate, Sean Dixon, called Karen, expressing his concerns about Bryce's mental state. He reported that Bryce had been drinking heavily and appeared deeply troubled. Alarmed, Karen asked Sean to take Bryce's car keys to prevent him from driving, but Bryce managed to convince Sean that he was fine, leading Sean to reluctantly return the keys. In the early hours of August 29th, Bryce began a drive that would become shrouded in mystery. He set out, heading south toward his parents' home, but ended up on a puzzling journey across Northern California that lasted nearly 24 hours. During this time, Bryce made several disjointed and unsettling calls to his parents, who desperately tried to track his movements. At around 9 a.m. on August 30th, Bryce's parents contacted a roadside assistance service after he mentioned running out of gas near Buttonwillow, California. The service delivered 3 gallons of gas, and the technician noted that Bryce seemed fine but unusually reluctant to continue his journey. His parents then instructed him to drive to a nearby truck stop and wait for them to meet him. However, Bryce never made it to the truck stop. Instead, he spent the next several hours sitting in his car near the truck stop, aimlessly driving in circles. Surveillance footage captured his vehicle leaving the area around 3 p.m., only to return minutes later. Bryce's phone calls to his parents during this time grew increasingly bizarre. Although his voice remained calm, his actions were erratic. His mother urged him to rest, assuring him that they would come to get him, but Bryce inexplicably stayed where he was, showing signs of deep internal conflict or confusion. Then, around 2 a.m. on August 31st, Bryce's car was found overturned at the bottom of a 25-foot embankment near Castaic Lake, approximately 2 hours north of Laguna Niguel. The car was on its side, with the back window shattered, and all of Bryce's belongings, his phone, wallet, and laptop, were still inside. But Bryce was nowhere to be found. The immediate investigation focused on the crash site. Authorities observed that the car's engine was still running, and the airbags had not deployed, suggesting that Bryce had managed to exit the vehicle on his own. There were no signs of a struggle or foul play, further deepening the mystery of his sudden disappearance. Search teams scoured the area for weeks, using helicopters, drones, and dogs, but no trace of Bryce was found. Divers searched Castaic Lake thoroughly, yet there was no sign of him. As time passed, the case grew colder, leaving everyone involved with more questions than answers. But let's explore a different angle that hasn't been widely considered: Bryce's mental state and possible psychological issues leading up to his disappearance. Several red flags might indicate that Bryce was experiencing a severe mental health crisis. His sudden change in behavior, heavy drinking, and the uncharacteristic decision to break up with his girlfriend suggest that he was struggling internally. The act of giving away personal items is often a sign of suicidal ideation, while his erratic driving and inability to reach his destination might indicate a dissociative state, where a person becomes disconnected from their surroundings or even their own identity. Additionally, there were reports that Bryce had been using the ADHD medication, Vyvanse, which, if abused or taken in large quantities, can lead to severe side effects such as psychosis, anxiety, and agitation. It's plausible that Bryce's unusual behavior was influenced by the misuse of this medication, either exacerbating an existing mental health condition or triggering new symptoms. Despite these indicators, there seemed to be a lack of immediate intervention from mental health professionals, which might have altered the outcome. The primary focus of the investigation was on finding Bryce physically, but understanding his mental state could have provided crucial insights into his actions and whereabouts. Bryce's disappearance has sparked numerous theories, ranging from voluntary disappearance to foul play. Some speculate that he may have wandered into the wilderness and succumbed to the elements, while others believe he might have hitchhiked and met an unknown fate. There are also those who think Bryce might still be alive, living off the grid, or suffering from amnesia. One angle that deserves more attention is the possibility of human trafficking. While it may seem far-fetched, the circumstances of Bryce's disappearance fit some of the patterns associated with trafficking cases, where young, vulnerable individuals are targeted and exploited. Another overlooked aspect is the potential involvement of someone Bryce knew. Was there a person in his life who might have taken advantage of his vulnerable state? Investigators should re-examine Bryce's social circle, looking for any clues that might point to personal conflict or manipulation. Additionally, the search for Bryce could benefit from advanced technology and renewed efforts. The use of modern forensic techniques, such as DNA analysis and geolocation tracking, might uncover new leads. Crowdsourcing information through social media and community engagement could also help gather fresh insights or witness accounts that were previously missed. Moreover, examining Bryce's digital footprint in greater detail could provide clues about his state of mind and intentions. Analyzing his online activities, text messages, and social media interactions might reveal patterns or conversations that point to what he was experiencing and planning in those crucial days. In the end, Bryce Laspisa's case remains one of the most perplexing disappearances in recent history. His family's relentless search for answers continues, driven by hope and the desire for closure. They have set up a Facebook page and continue to work with private investigators, hoping that someone, somewhere, knows something that can unravel this mystery. If you have any information about Bryce Laspisa's disappearance, please contact the authorities. Every bit of information, no matter how small, could make a difference in solving this case. It was December 29, 1999, in Vinita, Oklahoma, when best friends Ashley Freeman and Lauria Bible, both teenagers, went missing. The day held special significance as it was Lauria's birthday. Sometime late on the 29th or early on the 30th, the Freeman residence was set ablaze. A neighbor, alarmed by the sight of the house engulfed in flames, quickly called the fire department. Lauria had informed her parents that she would be spending the day at Ashley's house, so when they were notified and arrived at the scene, they found the home reduced to ashes. Seeing Lauria's car parked near the driveway, her parents feared the worst, assuming their daughter had perished in the fire. However, to their shock, Lauria's body was not found. The only remains discovered were those of Kathy Freeman, Ashley's mother. In an interview with the media, Lauria's mother, Laureen, recalled the moment she learned of the situation. The county coroner told me there was only one body. I asked, have they found anybody else? And she said, no, they've looked, but there's no other bodies there. Lauria's father, Jay, also recounted the last time he saw his daughter. Lauria asked me, Daddy, is it all right if I spend the night with Ashley at the Freeman's home? I said, just make sure you're home by noon tomorrow. But noon tomorrow didn't happen the way it should have. The fact that Kathy Freeman was the only body initially found in the burned home was strange, but the situation grew even more mysterious when it was determined that Kathy had died from a shotgun wound to the head, not from the fire. This led investigators to believe the fire was intentionally set and that the missing individuals had been abducted. The day after the fire, Lauria's parents returned to the Freeman house to search for any clues that might lead them to their daughter. To their surprise, they discovered another body, which had been missed during the initial search. This body was later identified as Danny Freeman, Ashley's father and Kathy's husband. Like Kathy, Danny had also been killed by a shotgun blast. Laureen described the gruesome discovery, noting, he didn't have anything from the upper teeth all the way to the top of his head. That same day, authorities found Lauria's purse, which contained her driver's license and a few $100s in cash, reinforcing the belief that Lauria had been abducted. With Ashley's remains still missing, it was likely that she had also been taken. As months passed with little progress in the case, rumors began to circulate about a possible feud between the Freemans and the local sheriff's office. This speculation stemmed from the death of Danny's son, Shane, who had been shot and killed by an officer after stealing a truck and firearm from a neighbor. Although Shane's death was ruled justifiable, the Freemans were reportedly planning to file a wrongful death lawsuit against the law enforcement officers involved. This possibility gained traction when Danny's brother, Dwayne, shared a chilling memory, Danny put his finger in my face and said, "If anything ever happens to me, look at the sheriff's department," and he was serious. He was in my face to drive it home with me. Dwayne added that authorities had threatened the family, claiming they could do whatever they wanted to them at any time. Despite this, polygraph tests administered to the sheriff's office staff cleared them of any involvement in the case. Another theory suggested that Danny Freeman was involved in illegal substance dealing, and the fire may have been the result of a deal gone wrong. However, Special Agent Steve Nutter expressed doubt, stating, "If you wanted to consider that it was substance-related, nothing fits correctly. The very last thing that people who committed the murders would want to do would be to abduct the children." Over time, additional theories emerged, but a significant revelation came when a death row inmate named Jeremy Jones confessed to the murders of Danny and Kathy Freeman. When asked about his motive, Jeremy claimed he was repaying a favor to a friend. He also stated that he had taken Ashley and Lauria to Kansas, where he shot them and left their bodies in an abandoned mine. Although Jeremy provided authorities with the exact location of the mine, a thorough search of the area yielded no evidence of the girls, and Jeremy later recanted his confession, admitting he had lied to gain better food and privileges. In April 2018, another person of interest emerged, 66-year-old Ronnie Dean Busick. He was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. The case against Ronnie also implicated 2 other men, Warren Welsh II and David Pennington, both of whom were deceased at the time. Witnesses came forward, claiming that Ronnie, Warren, and David had bragged about killing Ashley and Lauria, and that the girls were held in Warren's trailer for several days before being killed. The witnesses even reported that the men had shared Polaroids of the girls. The motive, according to these accounts, was that the Freemans were killed over substance money. Warren's girlfriend later informed police that he had kept a briefcase containing the Polaroids in question. In July 2020, Ronnie Busick pleaded guilty to being an accessory to the first-degree murders of Danny and Kathy Freeman, as well as to setting the fire and abducting Ashley and Lauria. He received a 15-year sentence, with 10 years to be served in prison and the remaining 5 on probation. However, Ronnie was released early in May 2023 for good behavior, serving less than 4 years of his 10-year prison sentence. While the culprits have been identified, the whereabouts of Ashley and Lauria's remains remain unknown. It seems that the truth may have died with Warren and David, if they were indeed involved. On January 6, 1991, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the mysterious disappearance of 28-year-old Terry Slaugenhoupt began to unravel. Terry, a woman with a troubled past, left her apartment on North St. Clair Street, where she lived with her roommate, to go on a date. That evening, she returned home, preparing for a job interview the next day. Her roommate recalls Terry mentioning she needed to make a quick trip to a nearby convenience store, something she did often due to the lack of a phone in their apartment. However, that night, Terry never came back. As the hours turned into days, and then weeks, her sudden disappearance became increasingly alarming to those who knew and loved her. Worry began to spread among her family and friends as they realized that Terry was nowhere to be found. Terry's life was marked by hardship and struggle. She grew up in Aspinwall, Pennsylvania, and battled with alcohol addiction, a problem that started when she was just in the 10th grade. Despite her efforts to overcome this through multiple stays in rehabilitation, Terry often found herself relapsing. Her relationship with her mother was strained because of her addiction, yet they managed to stay in touch, especially on special occasions like holidays and birthdays. The last time her mother saw Terry was during Christmas in 1990 when Terry visited with an unknown man by her side. Terry had plans to reconnect with her brother on January 8th, but when she didn't show up, her absence was painfully obvious. Her concerned brother reached out to her roommate, who informed him that Terry hadn't been seen for days. This prompted the involvement of the authorities, who suspected that foul play might be involved. However, the investigation quickly hit a wall due to the lack of solid evidence and the absence of witnesses who could provide any insight into Terry's last movements before she vanished. Despite the passing years, Terry's mother holds onto the hope that her daughter is still alive, believing that she wouldn't just disappear without a trace. Yet, every new detail uncovered by investigators only adds to the enigma surrounding Terry's case, leaving her disappearance as one of Pittsburgh's enduring mysteries.